Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with the post-game matchup between me and Josh. Chaos Space Marines versus Necrons with a final score. Chaos 95, Necrons 69.
You're the real winner there.
I know. Aren't we all winners? Because we're playing Warhammer in our basements till 1 o'clock in the morning. That's what winners do.
Well, before the July weekend, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's go over and talk a lot about this. Now, first of all, this was my first opportunity to actually use the tactical cards. I haven't had a chance to see those yet, and seeing how lists could be built to incorporate those more. Back in seventh edition, I think was the first time we'd seen the tactical cards. Right? I think I was at that time.
That's when I started, so I'm not sure before that.
So there was, we had the decks of cards that we would shuffle up for them. Now, at that time, there was mission objective cards that would say, hold objective marker 1, hold objective marker 5.
Yeah.
And going into this, we didn't have any of those. In fact, going into this, the objectives are pretty much obtainable most of the time of the game, but you're going to be getting in your opponent's face. Do you feel a lot of that as well?
I feel that you have to be very, very flexible to do them still, to do all of them correctly. But yeah, there's no like, oh, you draw, go get objective 6, and objective 6 is your opponent's home objective, and you're like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
They even have stipulations on the first turn. If you draw the card that says go grab your opponent's home objective, that you put it back and draw a new card.
Right. And so there's a lot of, it's a lot cleaner than it initially was with previous editions, because like you said, we having to hold that objective or take a unit off of objective that was in your opponent's deployment zone early in the game. That might be, it feels bad. And at the same time too, you could end up drawing those objective markers and go, wow, I literally just passed the turn and score 10 points on whatever it may be. So, but yeah, that's just with the cards in that sense. And that was the first time I got a chance to use them. Specifically, one of the reasons, like I said, I told Josh earlier, I wanted to come out here because he's had a couple more games. And I was like, I want to be able to get a good, clean feel for how this stuff is going to work. And, you know, bring the ctans, easy 14 model list. I love it. And try them out and see how this all do. You know, it's wasn't as bad as I was originally thinking it was going to be, but definitely a lot of limitations behind stuff. Biggest thing was not being able to, and not having infantry to go through ruins and get to the center.
Because what does fly feel like now? Feels like the keyword called jump, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't. It just.
If you're not infantry and you want fly, you're going up and over and down again. So that's real tough on your big ctans.
No, the only time that fly was actually good was when when I moved the locust into the building to be able to get the line of sight, because then it was able to kind of cover that distance going up, getting in there, and then coming back down. So that was the only time that it came into effect, was with the shooting unit that was trying to move around. Other than that, it was not really that effective. But let's talk about the MVPs, the winners of today's games, the Chaos Space Marines. So early on, you things were not like, you did some damage, but not the way as I recall. Like in the early turn, you did some damage, but you weren't able to completely finish those things off like you liked. So was that getting a little concerned that these ctans were making it around into another turn when you wanted them gone?
So my initial 10th edition testing was similar to your list, actually. It was 8 demon princes and a chaos list, because all things chaos is what I like. But so I kind of was daunted by the fact that your army is toughness 11. You have lots of invulns and feel no pains and ways to ignore my damage. And I hadn't get a lot of tests in with this yet. So when I peppered in, and you admittedly failed way more saves than you even should have too,
first turn,
and I still didn't kill those 2. I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a problem since I'm not on the objectives. I'm not in a great position, and Shalaxi is going to get hurt. Didn't think she'd die that easy, but yeah, you got her.
I was concerned on the early play, bringing the Transcendent Ctans out so early, but you know, one of the things is with lists like this and lists like this style, with the high toughness, the reduced damage in half and stuff like that, I wanted to see how much they could actually take and how far they could go and how much they could get hit. And if I stay back and play defensively and not move out there, number one, I'm not scoring secondaries like I did. Like I was able to jump out to a huge lead early on. And the point was to try to maintain that lead. And where I lost that lead was when Abaddon and friends decided to come sweeping in there. And when the scales kind of tipped in the favor and the Nightbringer went down and the Deceiver in the same turn, way too hard. And now looking back at that, you've rolled the dice out with this more. Was that above average? Should that have happened, do you feel? Or I personally thought the Deceiver should have lived.
I think I put 1,200 points of shooting and fighting into that, though, so that was about right, because all of my auto wounds, explosions, and chip damage is the reason I think it got there. And I found that out throughout the game, I was chipping away with using like the Obliterator's 1 damage profiles. Whenever I had the choice of a sweep or a 1 damage profile, because you have to damage, I found that my auto wounds were chipping away more than they should have, which was a nice feeling. I was like, oh, this is like kind of like Votann.
When I just have the feel, when it's only just an invuln and no feel, no pain, then it's just like, oh, here's a 4-up, fail it. Okay, well, take a wound, take a wound, take a wound. And for me, yes, the Reanimator is able to heal a lot, but I need to get over that time. I need to get to that phase to be able to heal.
And if I'd failed that charge, the game changes there by a lot, because then I don't score like that was 8 points I got, and taking you off the primary, it's a 13-point swing alone.
Yep. And then the Deceiver's there, Deceiver's alive, Deceiver's able to move into the center and pick on the Obliterators, albeit probably still dying to Abaddon in return. But now that's and then you lost your secondary as well too. So that charge was crucial. Yeah, crucial. And what did you need on that? Did we measure before?
It was a 7-inch charge, because you were just outside of 12 last turn when you went to shoot at me, and that's how I used the Nurgle strat. And we quickly found that out.
Yeah. No. So 7. I mean, and 7's not too bad.
Not too bad.
No, but definitely, that could have swept the game over there. All in all, like I said, looking at this in a complete nutshell with the ctans, there is a lot to be. The ctans are very good, but
I really like this Transcendence.
Yes, so do I. The Transcendent ctans were amazing. I think that because of the change to fly, it's really difficult to maneuver those other ones, and you got to have some infantry. Deceiver, didn't do too much. Void Dragon, we didn't get to really see, because looking at his stats, he was the big winner. And so when you came in and shellacked him with shellacking, then
disrespecting her,
she shellacked my Void Dragon hard.
Shellaxy.
But Nightbringer, I like Nightbringer and Void Dragon. Nightbringer does good solid damage. Void Dragon, still kind of tough. I would have to say, I think moving forward, I'd probably go Nightbringer and 2 Transcendence. Drop the Void Dragon, because he's just so big that he's going to be easy to be hit from anywhere. Yeah. Nightbringer, maybe a little bit easier to hide.
Short.
And he's got a really nasty range hit. And then get the infantry in there. Get the units that are able to get through the buildings.
Also has dev wounds in combat, which can really swing out of nowhere.
Yes.
As we saw with Shellaxy with a 4-up invul and 5-up Feel No Pain going down to basically the Nightbringer alone.
Yeah, literally.
It was a good hit.
Yeah, and that says something for the Nightbringer and how strong he still is. Like I said, the Deceiver, I mean, the redeploy is nice, but just like in most games, anytime I use a redeploy, I always feel like I move like 1 unit. Like everyone in your mind, you put that redeploy in there and you go, oh, if I go first, then I can move all this stuff and just shoot downwind and do all this. And then it never plays out that way.
So my advice for redeploys, if you ever use them again, is throw your things you're going to redeploy as absolutely aggressively as possible to get in your opponent's head. And then when you go to redeploy, if you go second, you can go back. But if you don't go second, now you can go.
And that's typically what I'd look at and do with it. But I feel like a lot of once you get to let's say you're 3 and out and you go into day 2, game 1. The person you play against, they look at those things and go, oh, okay, so that's what you're going to redeploy after. And a lot of us, we know that. We see that a lot. So it ends up just kind of being like, in that situation, was it worth paying for that ability? And we're looking at the Deceiver, who's actually more expensive than the Nightbringer. Yeah. Wow. 265, 10 points, but still 265 versus 255. Yeah. So all in all, though, I like I said, I like what the Ctans can do. But I think the true MVP out of this, in a lot of ways, was the heavy destroyers. They wreck. They hit. I like them a lot.
I think you should try 1 unit of 2 with the anti-infantry guns, and then possibly one of the Locust Destroyer Lords, because you can choose who you attach them to at the start of the game.
So last night when I was putting this all together, I actually did have Locust with the Locust Lords. I had 2 Locust Lords in there. And for those who don't know, the Locust Lord gives you a 5-up crit on all of it. So sustained, lethal, everything like that. And I did have a 3-man squad of the Enigmatic Exterminator, which is the rapid fire. It's anti-infantry all day. And I had the Veil on that one.
Nice.
And so that was the original one. The issue that it came about is I was investing point after point after point and not having enough left over to get it all in there.
Got it.
On top of the ctans. So I do like that. And I feel like that is definitely a route to go with the Firebase.
I think only 1 Destroyer Lord, and then based on your opponent's list, you can attach it to whichever unit you want at the start of the game.
Yes, yeah. And that's where it's with the one with just like 1 full heavy gauze, 1 with this, depending on where I need those shots.
Yeah,
the only issue right now is we're still in that Knight meta.
Yeah, Knights are tough.
But enough about Necrons. Let's talk about the chaos. Let's talk about what you got going on here and stuff like that, because there was some interesting stuff with interesting interactions with different stuff. Abaddon being a complete and total beacon of
Chapter Master, yes.
Yeah, Chapter
8th edition Gilliman style.
Chapter Masters are jealous of him.
Yeah.
So because he really is that beacon, and he gives so much. I mean, let's go through him real quick. So he's giving what buffs he's just giving out just by existing.
All game, I only picked the 1, which was just reroll hits within 6 inches, and it's any hits you would like. So you can like Oath of Moments, hits and wounds, but it's just the hits for all the CSM within 6 of him.
However, because you're rerolling hits,
yes, and because I have a lot of units marked with Tzeentch in this list, I'm auto wounding on 5s with the Tzeentch Pact instead of 6s with the lethal hits on criticals. Our criticals turn to 5s. Which really bumps up their...
it means toughness values don't matter.
Toughness doesn't matter, yeah. And then those Obliterators, they've got some high damage shots, but their true value here, like I said, was the fact that they can get D6 plus 3 shots, sustained hits, lethal hits on 5s. And then they were starting to chip away everything little by little.
Right, so suddenly my toughness 11 didn't matter.
Strength 5 into you, and I wounded, what, like 8 times on average?
Yep, and then it's that chip damage where it's like, oh, I fail 3. Okay, well, guess what? 3 takes me down into single digits right there. Now I'm at 9 wounds. Oh, now 3 more from another Obliterator. Okay, now I'm at 6. Now now that Catan is at 50% and looking pretty juicy as a target. And that was basically how every single one of them got picked up. Like the devastating wounds didn't bother me. The devastating wounds didn't bother me at all, because you'd hit me with the devastating wounds. You'd get to that point where you'd roll the dice, and I felt like every single time you rolled the dice, you stopped, you looked at it, you went, okay, you take 1, and here's a couple saves. But then as soon as you started rolling the lethal damage, you would pick these things up and go, all right, here's 11, and now I'm going to roll these over here, and then I'm picking those 11 up and going, oh, I got a 4-up save. That's it. And early on, I rolled like crap, and they would not save anything. So then it's like, boom, okay, well, you just did 5 wounds to me, and I saved 1. Okay, guess what? I just took 4 off those lethal. The lethal hit is brutal. Brutal, absolutely. And there's a lot of stuff in Necrons that I'm looking forward to trying to run with them. Some of the combos, one of the big characters, and actually I'm going to be making a video just talking about him soon, is the Plasma Sight. You familiar with what he does?
On this edition.
So the Plasma Sight, Plasma Lancer. Plasma Lancer. So Plasma Lancer is another form of Cryptek. And last edition, he was garbage. He would just kind of like a little lightning bolt, do a little bit of damage. Lightning bolt.
Unlimited power.
He was our version of a Smite.
Yeah.
Now he's nasty. So first of all, whatever unit he's with, crits on 5-ups a hit. That's it.
Turns out that's pretty good.
That's it. No dice roll, nothing special. Boom, there. And then his attack, he targets a unit and rolls 1 dice for each model in that unit. And on a 6, they take a mortal wound.
Okay.
Right, right. And he attaches into Warriors, Immortals, or Lich Guard. So obviously not the Lich Guard because
They're busy.
they got
They have their own characters that
their
work with them.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen
If
that in
it's not a
action.
Technomancer or Orcan, GTFO.
Get out of there, yeah.
Yeah, but the but Immortals with their Strength 5, AP2, 1 damage, Gauze Blaster. Might be AP1, but that Gauze Blaster, now that's critting on 5s. And so seeing a lot of that with the lethal, the only thing that's really, though, I'm still super jealous of, and I have to look through it, is I don't get the rerolls you do. The rerolls are really what kicks it in there, because you take a pocket of the dice and you pull them out, and then you try again with that, and you take a pocket of those dice and pull them out. And then even when you're done with that, you still have a chance to wound with those dice.
Yeah.
But it's just like you're reducing how many times you have to roll these things to get that effective damage and even hurt. And it's huge into it. I mean, I can't stress enough how nice that was to see, and the fact of how those lethal wounds look. And I'm definitely going to be looking back for some rerolls.
And it's nice that the universal special rolls everyone has them at least in some way, though. So like, just because Chaos has the rerolls of lethal hits doesn't mean you don't have lethal hits. Like you said,
just where do you get them from?
Yeah.
You know, it's just where and how do you get these effects from, depending on, again, the faction and the army. You know, certain armies like Space Marines any marine bodied army, it seems like tends to have an easier access to some of the rerolls. Like it just an easier time getting those out there. While Xenos armies seem to have a little bit more trouble, not trouble, just a little more difficulty, or it's very linear where it's like one unit or something like that. I got to look back over the King and see what his was.
Yeah.
But you know, it's definitely just you got to get those rerolls.
I'm running the equivalent of CSM's Primarch because, you know, Horus died for good reasons. But anyone,
he could have left.
So I get it. Yeah.
See, Necrons, we liked Sanguinus.
He's a cool guy.
You could have left Sanguinus. You could have locked him in a pod and, you know, gave him the Armageddon moment and locked him back in a pod and say, "You take care of my daughter." Talking about the Emperor. And then leave, and then go take care of the Emperor.
Anybody watching the video notices the Forge Fiend I had ended the game at 2 wounds. And let's remember that DJ never actually got a wound through to it.
He involved it. The one I did hit.
Yeah, so between failing Dark Packs and overheating Plasma and Hazardous, he went and did 10 damage to himself.
And he was alive at the end of the game. He lived till the end of the game.
Though, don't discredit him. He did put out probably, 40 damage to that game?
He did a lot of damage.
He put out so much.
Menacing.
He doesn't need the support since he's undivided. He just spends a CP each turn and rerolls hits and wounds.
See, and that's one of the things that scares me about the Locust and the Locust heavies is with like the Obliterators and the Forge Fiend. Yeah. 1 round of shooting, and every time you shot 1 round of shooting, with granted a strong,
I overcommitted a little, but yeah.
But it was 1 unit.
Yeah.
And the 1 unit would pick them up, and I'd lose those 3. And I'm sitting back there, and literally the entire game, I was sitting on 2 command points just so I could go, I'm going to spend a command point and reanimate. Then I'm going to spend a command point and shoot back at you because you just shot at me. Yeah. And I'm sitting there waiting to pull that pocket play, and boom, killed on the number. Boom, killed on the number.
Just gone.
Yeah, so that's one thing that scares me a little bit with the Locust in that sense. With this list, there wasn't a lot for me to do with command points. Rerolls was basically it.
You don't have access with the big models to use those defensive strats because they require models to die. And yeah, I was asking you, I was like, hey, what defenses do you have? And you're like, when you're done, I have something. But until then, I'm sitting here.
I need you to activate my trap card.
Yeah, I decided to cast no.
Yeah. No, and that's where, like, when we first set up and we were starting about the game, Josh had asked me, he's like, all right, so what do you got? He's like, wait, where are your Lich Guard? And like I told him, like, right now, my Lich Guard, I'm finishing getting them table ready and turn them ready because I know Lich Guard are good.
Mm-hmm.
There's not even a question in my mind that Lich Guard are probably one of the best Necron units.
Stellar.
Yeah, they're just amazing. But what about some of these other weapons? You know, especially with the changes to Eldar and towering and all these other things, what other things can do work, can do damage, and can make this stuff happen? And out of this, I'd say definitely the number 1 was Transcendent Catan.
The ability to move
aside from all the other
not
stuff.
even their defenses, just the ability to move around the board is so powerful in tactical missions.
That one that got to the center was amazing. Just
Scored
so
you 15
many points off there.
on 2 turns.
Right, and there's so many times where, and like, one of the things is like when you move a unit into center, you're held to how far you move, how many inches you have, is there other units around you, blah, 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 all these other things. With that, it was just pick up and, okay, where do I need to position you now? And that was 2 turns I was able to hold that and really jump ahead.
For the first 3 turns, I was down by almost 20 points because you're a head lead. It was good.
No, and that was kind of where I was trying to play it into, was play into the lead. I think the big part where I really lost the game in a sense was I should have moved further around your Demon Prince and your Schlacken. I should have moved further around her, and since I do have fly, I could ignore her and move over her and be behind her to then get into a position to either draw some of the fire. And I think that
because that next turn I moved out not without fear of your charges because you couldn't make it to me.
Correct. Yeah. And that was one part of it. And the other thing is that I was giving you, and I didn't notice this until turn 3 when it was a little too late. I was giving you a shooting gallery where you could then take the units and pick them off. And a lot of it was coming down to the sense of still kind of getting used to the new fly mechanic and kind of tripping over myself with that, of going like, oh, I need to be here, I need to be there. So in conclusion, would I play this list again? My answer is no. I would not play this list again. Would I play a variation of this list? Absolutely, for Definitely. 2 reasons. I love telling people you're playing a list that's called Catan, You Feel the Love Tonight. That's a big one. And number 2, there is still a lot of power. There is still a lot of power. I just need it. I gotta have the infantry to be able to push those walls. And that was a huge deficiency. Another thing is other missions. Other missions might play out differently with that, with the deployment. You know, this hammer and anvil was tough for my army to be able to pseudo hammer.
Close to hammer and anvil,
yeah, very much so, because of the distance I had to travel. But it became a shooting gallery and let our guns really go to town for both of us. Now, as far as you're the one who's about to be going to a GT here soon. So soon that we're like literally within breathing room of it. You're on this calendar week. So after this, during this GT, there's going to be a couple of changes to towering for that event. Is there fate dice change?
Yeah, there's a couple. I can go over them if you want.
Well, what's the fate dice change?
So fate dice and Sisters Battle also got the same change.
The miracle dice.
Miracle dice, yeah. They both are counting as modified rolls now. So that way there's no interactions with criticals. There's no interactions with devastating. And that just limits them to be able to change their dice value to what they want, but not feel oppressive. You've described it to me before. Eldar can not roll a single dice and dish out well over 20 mortal wounds on the first turn, before you even go.
When we were
with one unit.
Yeah, when we were setting up, we were discussing it, and obviously it's not the most ideal scenario. It's not the tactically best scenario, but just talking it through, you legitimately, odds-on favorite with your fate dice can just go, here, I'm going to spend fate dice and destroy X. And that's it.
It's just gone.
And that's, okay, I'm fine with the fact, like, if you rolled that out on your D cannons and just destroyed something, hey, that's dice, baby.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the way it's going to be. And I go, well, how far away is the bar?
But if that happens 7 out of 7 rounds over and over again, that could be a little skewed.
So, especially when the fact that your opponent literally just says, I don't have to do anything. I just go, here, I'm going to put these dice in the middle of the table. Do you want to pick that up?
Yeah. Games Workshop announced that they're going to put out the FAQ for this issue. They didn't say what it was going to be.
Correct.
So Brian had to make a decision. Brian Horton runs really good events out in Syracuse, out in New York. And I'm going to go to his event because he's a great guy, great friend. And it's not too far. New York's not too bad from Ohio. We've got
no, but just New York's so expensive.
We've got a lot of DOG members like myself going out there, so I'm getting picked up on the way. So nice and easy.
Fair.
Carpooling is a great way to go to tournaments.
If I didn't just go to California, I'd be joining you guys. But that's a little too expensive. But we will be going to Columbus. we'll be going down there. So me and you we got some more
Scott
practice games
Stormquist
in there.
Great event down there. Arch City GT. It's gonna be a fun time.
That's gonna be a lot of fun there. So I'll be taking Necrons. I definitely will be. Definitely. Do you think this list is going to survive? Your list is going to survive over into that, or is this once that FAQ hits, you're going to be going back, clean the slate, pick it up again?
I have 7 games to find that out this weekend, but I'm most likely going to be keeping the same core. I might actually add more obliterators and cut those possessed. This possessed, I'm still on the fence on, and it will really depend on points and if knights survive the FAQ. Brian, for his event, has limited towering to only include 1 intervening building at a time. So that way you can't shoot through all of the buildings in the game. But that applies both ways.
Right.
So the knights are safe, too, from the first turn.
Right, but at the same time, too, we do... Now this brings melee monsters back up to the equation. Because if you had melee monsters that could... For me, I love the Scorpex. I know a lot of people are down and they're like, oh, they're so much weaker from last edition. So
is everyone else, though.
Thank you. Yes. So is everything else. But what do Scorpex do? Well, first of all, the Scorpex Lord gives them lethal hits. And then if you pop a Plasma Sight, you get... The Plasma Sight's now just like a token. It was a little doggy thing that would follow around Scorpex.
I remember that.
So now every 3, you get 1. And it's just a token.
Okay.
But then when you spend it, that unit gets devastating wounds.
Like shield drones. Oh, that's actually not bad. That feels a lot like those possessed I was running.
A lot of people are like, oh, it conflicts because now you have lethal and then you have this and devastating. I'm like, dude, you really know.
I'll take free real estate. I'll take an auto wound.
Not to mention the Scorpex Lord himself is brutal. He does impact damage.
We need to see the return of Thanos.
Oh, he's coming back. Oh,
everyone in the channel knows Thanos by now.
Thanos, copyrighted.
Thanos.
Yep. But yeah, no, I'm definitely going to be, Scorpex are going to be coming back into it. I like running 2 6-mans of them. I like to be able, for me, a lot of my play style, I like to play from objectives. For most play, we played for years. I like to play off of the pieces of terrain and runes and be able to pinpoint myself up onto an objective, watching it, and then once you hit that, guerrilla tactic jump out there and hit you back with whether it was Wraiths, whether it was Scorpex, etc. And I still think Scorpex do very well at that. They're still fast enough. They can rush out there and they escort the Scorpex Lord, who really, he bonks. He bonks.
I love that word.
But yeah, no. So Josh, thank you very much for getting this game with me. Now I have a lot more of a better perception around what the tactical cards are. I honestly, in my mind, I think I let them get way too much in my head as what they were doing. Shuffling out the deck, drawing the cards, really does feel like the best way to build most armies around right now.
It's so much fun, too.
Later, when we see more of these codexes and see whatever, I say codex, but I'm afraid to even say, like, is it really going to be a codex? Like, until we see the Marines and NIDS one drop, we don't know what this really is going to be.
It could be a book full of detachments.
Right.
We don't know.
Yeah, it's really going to be, we'll have to wait and see what we actually call it, But until those drops happen, and when those drops happen, that might be where we start to see lists where people are looking more at those locked-in secondaries, Because, like, even this one, we talked about why not just take Assassinate, And that was, but as you said, it was like, in this, yes, you did table, you would have gotten those points, but
that's only 20 of your 40.
But yeah, what about that?
Yeah, what else am I doing? Yeah,
what else?
There's no good second one at that point.
Bring it down.
I believe there only were 3 apiece, so maybe it was 15. It could have been worth it. I also wasn't sure coming into this game if I could kill you, and wanted the option to back away and kind of play cat and mouse if I needed to. Right,
and that's fair. And I mean, given the fact of my first turn's dice rolls, it could have been wishy-washy later in the game. A couple good hits on one side, and leaving a Catan on an objective where, like, when the Beholder Catan was out there, if he would have survived and cleared that objective, that might have been a position where you're like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going to take your objective on your side. And that Catan could have sat there with 1 wound for the rest of the game.
And if I had taken Bring It Down Assassinate, you wouldn't have fed me all the Catans.
No.
You'd have kept 1 or 2 alive for the rest of the game, and I never would have maxed that out.
No, you're right. I would have hid behind the 2 walls. It would have been a very boring game because I would have hid right behind the 2 walls on my half of the field. scored 10 points each of those turns, and then just drew my cards and said, okay, I'll give you this unit so I can score these points.
I think the fact that they have fixed so much of a choice that it's like it's not the auto take makes the game way more interesting and way more interactive, because you're like, oh, I built this army to do this fixed objective, and I did too. We're going to sit here and we're going to look at each other and score a bunch of points. Go.
Now, one thing we didn't do, which is actually technically how Games Workshop has this set up, and we didn't do this in ours, you're supposed to draw, you would technically, both of us would be putting 2 cards down. No matter what. At the beginning of the game, we'd be putting 2 cards down.
2 of the fixed secondaries down,
or the tactical. And it basically, because isn't there...
you'll put 2 down, 2 of the fixed ones down. Those will be your fixed if you say, because you simultaneously reveal it. And if you reveal, I'm going to do fixed, those are the ones you're stuck with. That way you can't change them. But if you say, I'm going to do tactical, you shuffle those back in and start the game.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying. Like, technically you're supposed to, but I mean...
We both looked at each other, talked about it, discussed it, and went, yeah, we're doing tactical. That's what, and I've played a few games of 10th, and that's kind of what most people do. They kind of just look at each other and go, yeah, I'm going to do this.
I think, and again, I think later into the edition, we might see some of it. If Games Workshop introduces... This is one thing that does scare me that could end up happening, and I think this is a very real fear. We get the codexes or whatever they may be, and magically inside those codexes are 1, 2, or 3 cards for faction specific.
Don't bring back the nightmare of faction specific secondaries, because that was so unbalanced. 9th edition things we don't miss.
You want to go all the way back? Let's
don't do it.
No. I got to give you the worst. Still, the worst one was Dark Angels back in 7th edition, where literally your army's ability was you played with all your secondaries hidden. And so you'd have like possibly like 6 cards in front of you, and they're all face down. And then it's like, okay, so I just have to trust that my opponent is just doing this all right and all fair, because there was a lot of interactions and stuff like that. It's like,
and even if they weren't trying to be wrong about it, they could have screwed it up on accident. So that's a fear you have to worry about too. It's not everyone's malicious, but sometimes there's a bad apple here and there.
Yep, and that one was definitely a card shuffling shenanigans of the world. Was not a fan of what that was with Dark Angels. Like, really, this is what we're doing now?
I'm gonna do a little shout out to an app, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tabletop Battles, made by Goonhammer, is very, very useful for these cards. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. They're just good people. It already has all of the cards on the app, and you can randomize. When you as a simulating drawing the new ones.
Where can people find that app?
It's on the App Store.
Just on any general
the
App Store?
Yeah, they're on both. It's called Tabletop Battles.
Cool. So yeah, guys, definitely it's definitely a great tool to download. I recommend it, especially for any of the tournaments, because even if your opponent says, "Oh, I'll keep score as well." Again, now this goes back to your sense of not maliciously, but sometimes just people click the wrong button. Or they heard you wrong or something like that. I think that with this edition, that's going to happen less.
Yeah.
But I know that happened a lot with the previous edition, and it wasn't malicious. It would be like you'd hear something, you go, oh, okay, you scored this point, and you might only give them 1 or 2 points for something that they actually scored 3 or 4. And then you look at it later, and you're like, oh, yes, you did do that, but I just misheard you or misunderstood it.
As long as you recap at each end of each turn, or battle round at least, you guys can discuss what points were scored at each battle round, and you'll have a clear game with your opponent, and there'll be no end of game. Well, I thought I scored this on this turn. Well, we talked about it already, and we both wrote it down. Good.
It's the same thing with like measuring and playing by intent.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people there's still a lot of people out there who who feel like they're going to give away too much of their strategy in that sense. And realistically, you're not really giving up too much of your strategy by just saying, okay, so this unit's measured 12 inch away, especially if you're doing it for like every unit.
If I'm planning a big charge, you'll see me do this a lot. I will measure my distance from my unit to your unit before I even move in the movement phase, because it's obvious I'm planning this charge, and say this is the distance between the two, and I move this much, so my charge is going to be this much, and we can just discuss it ahead of time. It saves some headaches.
Oh yeah, no, and we had that exact moment. That was the exact moment that happened. Was with the Terminators, when the Terminators were charging into the ctans. Josh moved some guys. Josh was getting ready to moving some models up, getting stuff positioned. Some stuff gets bumped every here and there. You're moving stuff. He goes, okay.
Table leg.
A lot. A lot. I have a tendency of running into Josh's table a lot. But he was going, he's like, okay, it's a 6-inch charge. I stopped. I was like, but I was more than 12 inches away. And then Josh stopped and looked and said, yes, you were.
It's a 7-inch charge.
This is that. So then we were able to go back and just go, okay, let me put these guys where they should have been for that. And we wouldn't have known that if we weren't doing pre-measuring, checking these things beforehand to make sure and see where they are.
That's good. Always talk with your opponent because you're both playing the game together and you're both trying to have fun. So, hey.
Yep. We all want, I mean, every one of us wants to win. But you want to win it the right way. You want to win clean. You don't want to, and if your opponent goes away and has a bad time, it sucks.
You're playing toy soldiers. There's no need for that. Yeah.
Exactly.
You want to both have fun. And by the way, I had a lot of fun and we learned a lot together.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that because I really needed to get the time to sit down with the cards. And now seeing the cards, now seeing what this is, the whole way through it, like there was a couple times that Josh looked at me and I had like kind of a stone face for a moment. He's like, and I could tell he's like, hey, you okay? And that's up. I'm like, dude, I'm already building like 3 or 4 lists. I'm like, dude, I'm like 9 lists deep right now. Let's finish the game. I'm over here, man. I'm looking at this going, okay, I needed this, needed that, needed this. And yeah, I need some infantry in there. I need to be able to breach through the walls. Ctans aren't going to do enough for that.
But they're great tools.
And they're cool. They're
great tools, though, too.
They're really, they're really cool. The only thing I'm worried about is with the Transcendent Catan was I don't know which way you want to go with that. The enhancements intended to be able to be given to them, or is that going to be errated in FAQ? That's a tough one.
We'll find out in a week or two.
Because in one sense, they don't have reanimation protocols.
It's true.
So, and with that saying of them not having reanimation protocols, that kind of goes both ways. It's like, oh, they don't have the Necron ability, so they shouldn't get the Necron enhancements. But in the opposite, it's like they don't have this ability, so that they're able to have the enhancement. Yeah. So I think that by the end of the week, we're going to get either a yes or no. I think right now, rules as written, it is 100% yes.
I didn't feel like they were any kind of oppressive with that, so I hope they keep them.
No, it wasn't.
Just tough.
And it just made them tougher. It just made them stronger. Both the Transcendents were really, really good, really powerful. And honestly, I would have to say that the Transcendents are the best of the Ctans. I thought the Void Dragon was too big.
Just too big. Like a pitcher of Kool-Aid big, yeah.
And he's not able to Kool-Aid, man. He just stands up against the wall and just goes, oh yeah. No.
The jump mechanic, yeah.
And not enough move for it to happen too. So, all right, guys. Well, hopefully you enjoy the game. We got some work to do. I'm going to be doing a couple more Necron videos on some stuff, and I'll hopefully get some more battle reports on the channel here soon. Again, Josh, awesome game.
Good job, man.
Thank you. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.